Welcome back, fellow travelers. I want to talk to you today about what you could do in Old Montreal during the wintertime. I'll give you my top 3 suggestions, so let's jump right in. Now, one of the first things I'll recommend doing is actually visiting the Notre-Dame Basilica that's in the Old Port of Montreal, or the Old Montreal itself. It's quite famous. It's one of the main tourist attractions in Montreal, so it's not exactly a hidden gem. But if you're not a religious person, or it's just not something you think you'd rather spend your time doing, I'd highly suggest you to reconsider it because it is quite a feat to behold. Taking a 20-minute tour, which is offered if you want to go into the Basilica, it's well worth it. It's like $5 for an adult. But not only that, it gives you good insight on the actual architecture, some of the important dates, and gives you really interesting facts that you can munch on for the rest of your trip and then bring that back for the people in your life to just kind of tell them about that whole experience. Not only that, though, there are a lot of weddings, funerals, and regular events that still take place inside the venue. So it's not purely a museum, or it's not something that just attracts tourists. A lot of people go there for religious purposes. That's really cool. But one I guess the downside you'd call it is those hours might be impacted when you're there. So generally they're open from 8 to 4, might be 8:30, 4:30, depending on the time of day or the time of the year. What you'll need to do is make sure that the day you're going isn't reserved for a major funeral, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, a wedding. Those are pretty common occurrences. They do allow people to sit on mass at certain times. That's something you need to research if that's something you're interested in. But it's something that I would say take the time. It's, like I said, a 20-minute tour, not a huge amount of time, and it's something that will allow you to, I guess, get out of the cold, enjoy some of the atmosphere of Montreal, while still maintaining that winter winter feel and winter vibe. Now, the next place I suggest is the Garde Manger. It's a restaurant, and it is owned and operated by celebrity chef Chuck Hughes. If you don't know who Chuck Hughes is, he beat Bobby Flay on Iron Chef, I think it is. His lobster poutine was the clencher, and it's something that you should try. In one of my other videos, I had mentioned how if you're going to Canada, try a poutine. If you want to try a lobster poutine, you should definitely head to Garde Manger. It is one of the main places for people to go. It is a hot spot for sure. There are at times where you absolutely need a reservation, but if you know you're going to Montreal ahead of time, in the wintertime, you want a good healthy meal that has an interesting twist, I really suggest this place. They're not open particularly late, usually closing about 11:30. It is in the Old Port, in the Old Montreal itself, so that does mean that things don't stay open as longer as the rest of the island of Montreal does. Whereas if you go right to downtown Montreal, things do stay open to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, so you will have to budget the fact that this place does close a bit sooner than normal. But I still recommend it. I've eaten there once, and I would definitely go back if I was able to. It is a bit on the expensive side, but well worth it if you are in the area and you want to try something that's got a bit of pizzazz to it, and you know it's going to be good food. Whatever you're served there, it's going to be delicious, and it's not even a question about it. Now, the last thing I suggest you do in the Old Port and Old Montreal in the wintertime is to actually take a walk. Now, you're going to be like, whoa, it's wintertime, I don't want to take a walk. I would say it is well worth your time to walk along the pier of the Old Port, to go through the city and the streets of the Old Montreal, really experience it. It does have a different atmosphere than if you're going through in the summer. In the summer, it is packed with tourists. In the wintertime, not as much. A lot of people don't want to venture out in the cold, but to be honest, unless you're going like middle of January or early February, the temperatures aren't going to be that cold relatively, but you're still going to get that nice winter backdrop while going through the Old Montreal and going through the small streets. I always enjoyed it. One of the pluses is that a lot of the cobblestones are kind of snowed in and it's packed, so you're not twisting your ankles as you're walking down cobblestone roads, but really just taking in the sights and sounds of Old Montreal during this time of year is another experience that you might not be able to get during the summertime, because of the amount of people that are in Old Montreal at that point in time. But definitely there is a lot to do in Montreal. I've left out a lot of stuff. Old Montreal is starting it's not even, I can't even call it a revitalization, because it's always been a place that people want to go to, but now it's attracting other types of events. There are also places like maze runs, there's axe throwing, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do in the Old Port nowadays and Old Montreal, that it's really a place to go visit. I highly suggest, no matter what time of the year you are there, take take the time to go visit Old Montreal. You won't regret it. Now, if you've been to Old Montreal and I didn't list something that you like doing, make sure to let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear it. If you haven't been, what are you most looking forward to, or what questions do you have about Old Montreal that you haven't found answers to? Let me know, and I would love to help answer those for you.